So continuing with where we can get accurate drug information. As I said, we have labeled drug information that is from the manufacturer. That information is based on studies that they have done and that the FDA has approved. But there are species, as I talked about, that we do not have a lot of clinical information about clinical trials and studies for them. There also may be human medications that come onto the market, and veterinarians that are board certified. So those are veterinarians that have gone through additional education after vet school and have specialized in a particular area, such as emergency medicine or equine medicine and surgery, those different areas, and they have completed uh, clinical write-ups and additional education, as I said. So continuing with where we can find accurate drug information for animals, we've talked about the labeled type of information. This is information that has been obtained through clinical trials and studies of the drugs in specific animals at specific dosages, and the drug has been FDA approved, Food and Drug Administration approved for those species, for those drug um, uh, administration procedures, all of that. All that information has been approved. But as I said, there are species that we do not typically have studied in this way. And they are related to other species, and so there can be information published by board certified veterinarians or a teaching hospital. And that information would be extrapolating what the labeled dosages and information is to other species. And then it might be written up in a study, or there might be a conference where the specialist tells us about what they have used. What you want to look for is information from veterinarians that are board certified, so they have studied extra in a particular area. They have more education and testing and requirements for becoming a diplomat of a certain type of college that, say, specializes in emergency medicine or equine medicine. So those folks have had this extra education and so are more qualified to be taking off in another direction with the drug and using it extra labelly, in an extra labeled manner, sorry. And when a human drug comes on board, that is often where that might be used in an extra label fashion. So where this information might show up are in veterinary journals. You want to look for ones that are peer reviewed. They will say they're peer reviewed, so that just means that the uh, peers or equals of the people who are publishing the information, so they're usually board certified veterinarians, are looking at other board certified veterinarians' information and research, and then it's published after it's been reviewed. Trade publications are a little less likely to be have a second look at them, so you want to be very careful with those. Proceedings from conferences, again, that is hopefully a board certified person discussing what they have used, but they will go ahead and provide a transcript basically of their lecture that gets published, and that's called a proceedings. So from a conference. And then formularies. Formularies are developed from a lot of these resources that I have talked about, usually published resources from peer-reviewed journals, and in addition to the labeled uses of the drugs. So it gives you a complete picture of those studies and the labeled information in one spot. And so they're very convenient, but they're they're going to be produced by uh, people that know about the drugs and know what are good studies to publish information about. The internet, you just have to be careful about this because you could Google things, but you really need to look at the source of who is giving the information. So you typically want board certified veterinarians that are using drugs in extra label or manners in different species and different drug regimens. That's what you want to look for. The drug manufacturer, obviously, a formulary. We will hopefully get access to one this semester online, and so you can easily look information up from good sources. There is a hierarchy or an order of the way that data is gathered about drugs. And the this is the list, and the top of the list is the best. Randomized controlled studies. This is where we have a drug that is given to a population of animals. We're going to have the animals divided into two groups. One group will get the drug, the other group will get what's called a placebo or a sugar pill, something that will have no effect on the animals. And the randomization process is that someone outside of the study divides the population up and knows which animals are actually getting the drug and which are not. And then you compare what happens with those two populations. A non-randomized controlled study might be where animals are referred to a veterinary teaching hospital, let's say, and because they have a certain type of condition, and the doctors there decide let's put this animal into the group that gets the drug, let's put this animal into the group that doesn't get the drug. It's non-randomized. It is um, a it's a selection process that happens. Retrospective studies are where a veterinarian, this is usually in a teaching hospital or somebody that is board certified, they are looking at how they have treated animals with a particular drug over time, and they look back at their records and they look and see how did this animal do when I gave them this amount, and maybe they use some drugs in an extra label fashion and they can make some conclusions with looking back over a certain number of studies. But it's not in advance. They're looking after the fact. Case reports, case series, that might be just reporting one animal in which a new drug has been tried for their particular condition. And again, that's usually a board certified um, veterinarian doing that. And then VIN, Veterinary Information Network, or VSPN, the comparable site for veterinary professionals such as vet techs, they will publish uh, extra label information as well. This is considered expert opinion, but again, you want to look for someone that might be more than just have gotten, not that it's an insignificant thing to get a veterinary degree, but somebody that has a little more uh, education in a particular area. But that's the order of things. And so what I'm trying to say is the randomized controlled studies is the best information because it's collected in the most unbiased manner. And as we get down in these others, we may have less numbers of animals that are being looked at. And down here in the anecdotal expert opinion area, someone is giving their best opinion about something, but it's not been studied. And I can't say this enough, an anecdote is not data. It is part of data collection and the decision to study something. But just because a particular drug worked for your aunt doesn't mean that it's going to work well generally. So that's an anecdote talking about one case. So we're going to have, in class, we're going to have um, uh, an exercise where we're going to be looking at package inserts and formularies for information. And the these drug reference materials are typically set up in a particular order. So we'll go through them. I think it makes more sense if we go through them and you're actually looking at them and getting information than me just reading and defining everything here. But in general, we're going to have a drug heading that's going to describe what type of drug it is and what it's typically used to treat. If it is a controlled substance, we'll have a designation for that. I'll talk about that again here in the next slide or two. There's going to be the USP designation, United States Pharmacopoeia designation. That indicates that the drug has been produced in a purity and consistent and clean facilities in a particular manner. It has to do with the manufacturing of the drug, not its efficacy, not does it work in an animal. It's just it was manufactured in a particular manner that guarantees its purity and quality. And then it's going to list active versus inert ingredients. Inert ingredients are the inactive ingredients. The indications, as I talked about before, those are the conditions or diseases that are going to be treated by a particular drug. A controlled substance. So if I'm going to be giving you a drug bottle in class, and if it has a C and a Roman numeral, this is going to be a scheduled drug. These drugs have a potential for abuse, or they may not have recognized medical use. And the the lower the number, so C1 would be more potential for abuse than C5. So we'll talk a little bit more in the next chapter about how these drugs are to be handled in your clinic, and there are special requirements for them, but it's important to recognize if a drug is controlled or not. There are going to be in this information a lot of different types of information about adverse reactions. And everything from these precautions to black box warnings to just plain old warnings. And we'll go over those in class during our exercise time. There's going to be information about dosage and administration, and then if it's a food animal, there's going to be information about withdrawal times. So this is the general order of information in a formulary, in a package insert, on a website. There is a typical order so that you'll get used to looking for where these things are. And lastly, it's really important that if it is noted that there has been a drug reaction, and this is a little dachshund. They are usually the poster child for vaccine reactions. For some reason, they tend to be a little more reactive to vaccines. And this is a typical response, swollen face. It may progress to more swelling of the body, and we can have everything leading to shock and death. So this, if you saw an animal like this, if you have an owner that says that they got their pet home and now their face looks funny, that is something not to ignore. You want them to bring the animal in and you want to start treatment. But you also want to report it after the animal's been treated to the FDA, to the drug manufacturer, and your book goes over this information and how you report it. But you don't want to just kind of shrug it off and go, oh, okay, that just happened. It's important to report these so that a manufacturer can pull drugs or vaccines off of the market or have recalls on them.